Hello, my name is Abdullahi. This is my wife, Aminat. We are successful rice farmers. Our experience with the rice farm has been very good. From 1 hectare, we earned a lot of money from sales.
And we still had enough rice for our family.
We learned how to produce quality rice using good agricultural practices. Do you want to be like us? Follow us and learn about our business secrets. First, we choose a fertile land with good drainage and high water retention capacity, such as clay and loamy soils, because my rice needs a lot of water to grow well. If possible, I use land on which I have planted rice, groundnuts, and cowpea or soybeans the year before, because this is very good for the soil fertility. We clear the plot using herbicides or manual weeding and put the residues at the side of the field. We heap them to dry, or if infected, we burn them. Bush burning is not encouraged. If unavoidable, carefully employ controlled burning practices.
Using a measuring tape, we measure our field to ensure that we can plan the quantity of inputs needed. Our field measures 100 by 100 meters. This gives us 10,000 square meters or 1 hectare.
I buy certified rice seeds and fertilizer from the Agricultural Development Program, National Agric Seed Council, or a licensed agro dealer at least 2 weeks before sowing. For the rice season, I choose a variety that gives harvest 115 to 125 days after sowing. For 1 hectare, I need 30 kilograms of seeds. I also buy 4 bags of NPK 15-15-15 and 2 bags of urea. This is the quantity needed for 1 hectare of land. If your plot of land is only half a hectare, you will need just half of these quantities. I always focus on the date I intend to transplant. I start my soil preparation 6 weeks before transplanting and my nursery activities 3 weeks to transplanting date. This allows organic matter to decompose well, while weeds are reduced and harmful insects die. I flood my fields 2 to 3 days before the first plow. I then leave the field fully flooded for 2 to 3 weeks before the second soil preparation. I give enough time to raise my nursery. I prepare my nursery 3 weeks to when I want to transplant and get all my farm inputs ready. I divide the field into basins. I level each basin and build bunds around it to control the water. I also construct drainage canals across my farm to remove excess water.
First, I do a viability test 10 days before seeding. I put 2 to 3 sets of 100 seeds each on a wet cloth and place upon a plate for 4 to 5 days. Then I count the germinated seed from each set of 100 seeds to know the germination percentage of my seeds. If germination rate is less than 60%, I increase the seed rate. 3 days before sowing to the nursery, I treat the seeds to protect them against pests and diseases and to make them grow well. I put the seeds into water for 24 hours. Then remove the floating seeds. Next, I remove the seeds from water and place them in a jute bag and cover it. I put the bag into a warm and shady environment for 48 hours so that they sprout. I raise my seeds in nursery beds to get strong seedlings and to save seed. I choose a field close to the main paddy that is sunny, fertile, well drained, and which I can water well. I do not choose a field which is at risk of being flooded. For 1 hectare of paddy, I need 10 nursery beds. I prepare my nursery beds 1 day before I sow. Each nursery is 10 meters long, 1 meter wide, and 4 to 6 centimeters above the ground level so that the seeds are not taken away by the water. I build bunds around the nursery to control the water. I let water in the nursery and level it. After leveling, I remove the excess water. I sow on the nursery when the rains have stopped. I broadcast the sprouted seeds on the wet nursery bed. I cover the seeds slightly with soil, not more than half a centimeter, and add a 1 centimeter layer of mulch. For 1 nursery bed, I use a maximum of 2 kilograms of seeds. For 10 to 13 nurseries, I need a maximum of 30 kilograms of seeds before germination. 7 days after sowing, I flood the nursery to a depth of 2 to 3 centimeters. I slowly increase the depth to 5 centimeters until the day of transplanting.
I start the final soil preparation as soon as we finish seeding the nursery, at least 1 week before transplanting. Before second plowing and harrowing, I flood my field for 2 to 3 days so that the soil becomes softer. I use a power tiller to puddle the soil when it has become wet, and I level with a rake. I then flood my field at 10 centimeters depth so that the weeds rot and the insects on the field die. This saves me a lot of hard work and time. After 2 weeks, I remove the water from the field and again, I use the power tiller to plow the field at 10 centimeters depth. I harrow and puddle to kill the germinated weed seeds. After the leveling, I repair all the bunds and canals to be able to harvest and drain excess water. After leveling, I remove the excess water from the field. For efficient fertilizer application, I use the Rice Advice recommendation throughout my production period. This gives me the precise quantity of fertilizer to apply. My neighbor, who doesn't use Rice Advice, applies 4 bags of 50 kg each of NPK 15-15-15.
Using protective gloves, I broadcast NPK 15-15-15 on the field, as this helps the plants grow and produce a lot of tillers. I work the fertilizer by feet into the wet soil when transplanting.
I wet the nursery just before uprooting to soften the ground. I uproot the seedlings carefully and plant them quickly into the rice paddy field. I transplant my seedlings at 3 weeks and not later than 4 weeks after sowing. This is when they are strong enough and not in danger of tearing or overflown with water.
Planting in lines makes work easier. I put pegs on 2 parallel borders of the field. I tie a cord between 2 pegs. I make holes along the cord at intervals of 20 centimeters. I put 3 seedlings per hole. I leave 20 centimeters between lines. I plant the seedlings at about 3 centimeters depth, such that the green part of the plant remains above the ground surface. Doing this ensures development of many tillers. 7 days after transplanting, I refill the gaps in which plants have not thrived with leftover seedlings from the nursery. I can plant the seed directly, only if my field is wet throughout the year.
I look out for signs of diseases or insects every time I work in my rice field. I do this until the harvest seasons. I only spray my field if I see signs of insects or diseases. These include rice blast, brown spot, or grain discoloration. I employ the services of spray service providers to spray my field with approved and recommended insecticides or fungicides from authorized sellers. If the services of the spraying service providers are not available, I spray the field myself. When I do manual weeding, I weed for the first time 2 to 3 weeks after transplanting. I do this because weeds steal the water and food which the soil gives to my rice while attracting insects. After weeding, I bury the weeds in the corner of a field so that they can decompose without attracting insects. If I must use herbicides, I use herbicides approved by the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development of Nigeria. I spray my field 3 weeks after transplanting. Chemical weeding reduces the weeds during the season and saves me a lot of time. During the chemical weeding, I put on protective clothing and respect safety regulations. A day before spraying my field with herbicides, I remove the water from the field. I spray only in the morning or evening on a clear and non-windy day.
I fertilize my paddy field with urea 3 to 4 weeks after transplanting. I do this at this stage so that my paddy can develop many tillers. For 1 hectare, I use 50 kilograms of urea for the first application. This is 1 bag. If I did not apply NPK at transplanting, I use 100 kilograms of urea, which is 2 bags at first application. I drain excess water to a level of 3 to 5 centimeters on my paddy field and broadcast the urea. 1 day after fertilizing, I let water into the field to a level of 10 to 15 centimeters depth. This water depth will also help to suppress weeds. I am aware that controlling water during the rainy season can be difficult. As such, I'm always careful with how I manage water during this period. I always leave a film of water of about 5 to 10 centimeters to suppress weeds and drain slightly to about 5 centimeters when applying urea.
If I weed manually, I weed again 5 to 6 weeks after transplanting when my paddy starts developing panicles. Before weeding, I remove the excess water from the field. I do not let it back on the field after weeding because I will use urea right after. I bury the weeds in a corner of a field.
Right after the second manual weeding, I apply urea for a second time. This is 7 to 10 weeks after transplanting. I do this so that my paddy develops many panicles. For 1 hectare, I use 50 kilograms of urea for this second application. That is 1 bag. Roaging our paddy fields can be done at about 11 to 12 weeks after transplanting. To keep my paddy variety pure and increase the market value, I move round the farms to roage out the off-types. When the off-types are few, I take out the whole plant as soon as the flowers appear before they form grains. The off-types are differentiated by variation in height, as they are usually higher or shorter compared to the dominant plants. If off-types are many in my farm, I leave them until shortly before harvest. I go into the farm and harvest the panicles of the off-types first. This is usually done around the 18th week after seeding, just before the general harvest. I put the harvested panicles of off-types into a bag and thresh the grains in a separate place.
When the grains start to develop, I protect my field with nets from birds that like to eat my paddy grain. Other bird scaring methods can be used. My paddy field is ready for harvest when more than half of the panicles are yellow or brown. This is about 13 to 16 weeks after transplanting. I cut the paddy stems with a sickle or a cutlass 10 to 15 centimeters above the ground. I bundle the paddy stems and put them together in piles such that the panicles are at the top. I make sure the panicles do not touch the ground. I dry the paddy 5 to 10 days after harvesting.
I thresh the well-dried paddy bundles carefully so that I do not break the grains. I use a mechanical device that threshes and winnows. This makes work faster and less tiring. Alternatively, I beat the paddy against a barrel or a wooden log, which is placed on a mat or tarpaulin. I do this so that my paddy doesn't break and does not get contaminated with sand and stones. I separate the empty or immature grains and the residues from the well-filled grains. By doing so, my paddy has a good quality and I will get a good price. I make use of the wind, a winnowing fan, or a bowl for the winnowing. I dry the paddy well to reduce the breakage during milling. I spread my paddy on a mat or tarpaulin in a thin layer of 3 to 4 centimeters. I do not dry the paddy on the bare floor so that dirt and stones do not enter the paddy. Every hour, I turn the paddy over. I dry my paddy for 2 to 3 days until the moisture content is very low. After drying, I put the paddy into polypropylene bags. Again, I make sure no dirt enters the paddy. I then store my paddy in an airy, cool, and well-protected space on a pallet where it is protected against insects and animals. I organize the transport to my buyer together with my farmers group. Because I organize the selling with my farmer group, I get a good price for my paddy.
Now you know our secret of doing good business with quality rice.
We wish you good luck and a lot of success.